For half a century, I've built my reputation on being right about the fundamental laws that govern our cosmos. I've crafted mathematical predictions that later stood up to rigorous experimental verification. I've formulated equations that precisely describe how our universe operates at its most basic level. I've staked my entire professional legacy on understanding the invisible architecture of reality itself. And now, I must stand before you and confess something that violates every instinct I've developed as a scientist. We were completely, fundamentally, wrong about 3I Atlas, not slightly mistaken. Not wrong about peripheral details. We were catastrophically wrong about what this object represents and what it's doing in our cosmic neighborhood. And what we've uncovered in the past 72 hours is more unsettling than any scenario we had previously imagined. Let me begin by acknowledging where we went wrong and why our initial assessments were so profoundly flawed. When 3I Atlas first entered our detection range in July, we classified it as an interstellar comet. That classification seemed reasonable based on the limited data available at the time. It displayed a calm-matter-characteristic diffused cloud of gas surrounding the nucleus. It followed a hyperbolic trajectory indicating an origin beyond our solar system. It showed outgassing activity consistent with volatile ices sublimating under solar heating. Every checkbox for comet classification appeared to be marked, so we proceeded with that assumption, allowing it to guide all subsequent analysis and prediction. But that assumption was fundamentally wrong. And because it was wrong, every conclusion we derived from it was contaminated by a profound misunderstanding. We've been trying to force 3I Atlas into a category it doesn't belong in, like attempting to understand a quantum computer by applying the principles of abacus mechanics. The framework itself was inappropriate from the very beginning, and the more data we gathered, the more obvious it became that something was deeply wrong with our model. Yet we kept trying to salvage it by adding exceptions and special cases rather than admitting we needed to start over from first principles. The first crack in our comet hypothesis appeared when we detected that mysterious deceleration in October. Natural comets don't break. The physics simply doesn't allow it. Solar radiation pushes objects away from the sun. Outgassing jets accelerate comets along their trajectories. Gravity makes approaching objects move faster, not slower. Yet, 3I Atlas was measurably slowing down in ways that violated every natural mechanism we could identify. We tried to explain it away. Perhaps unusual outgassing geometry. Maybe we miscalculated the mass. Possibly measurement error across multiple independent observatories. We grasped at increasingly implausible explanations rather than confronting the obvious implication that our fundamental classification was wrong. The second crack appeared with those high-resolution images from Mars orbit showing geometric patterns. On the surface, hexagonal structures arranged with mathematical precision, circular apertures with uniform dimensions, cylindrical protrusions extending from the main body. We looked at those images and immediately started trying to explain how natural geological processes could create such features. Maybe some exotic form of crystallization we'd never observed before. Perhaps tidal forces during formation created regular fracture patterns. Maybe we were experiencing pareidolia, our brains finding patterns in random noise. Again, we refused to accept the straightforward interpretation that these features looked artificial because they are artificial. The third crack came from the chemical composition analysis. 96% carbon dioxide with virtually no water. That ratio doesn't occur naturally in any formation scenario we can model. Every comet from our solar system shows water as the dominant volatile, because water ice is what forms readily in stellar nebulae. Finding a comet with almost no water is like discovering a fish that doesn't need water to survive. It's chemically possible, but evolutionarily inexplicable. Yet, we kept trying to force it into natural formation models rather than questioning whether formation was even the right framework to apply. But the final crack that shattered our entire model completely arrived 72 hours ago with data from the perihelion passage. 3I Atlas reached its closest approach to the Sun on October 29th. We had every major telescope and spacecraft that could observe it pointed in that direction, gathering data continuously for 48 hours. And what we documented during that passage doesn't just challenge our understanding of comets, it challenges our understanding of what's physically possible in our solar system. Let me walk you through exactly what happened, because the details are crucial and deeply unsettling. As 3I Atlas approached perihelion, solar heating intensified dramatically. At closest approach, the object experienced radiation flux equivalent to standing on Mercury's surface at noon. That level of heating should cause catastrophic responses in any icy body. Volatile ices should sublimate explosively, creating massive outgassing that fragments the nucleus. We've observed this behavior in dozens of sun-grazing comets. They either develop spectacular tails extending millions of kilometers, or they break apart completely under thermal stress. 3I Atlas did neither. The outgassing rate actually decreased as solar heating increased. Let me repeat that because it's so counterintuitive. It sounds like I'm describing magic. As the object got closer to the Sun and experienced more intense heating, it released less gas, not more. The coma that had been steadily growing throughout October began to shrink during perihelion passage. Spectroscopic measurements confirmed that gas production dropped by approximately 40% between October 27th and October 31st. Even as surface temperatures climbed to over 400 C, that behavior violates basic thermodynamics. Heat energy must go somewhere. If it's not being used to sublimate ESOS and create outgassing, then it's being absorbed by the object and converted to internal energy, or is being radiated away as thermal emission, or is being used to drive some other process we haven't identified. The thermal emission data shows the object is radiating far less heat than it should be, given the solar flux it's receiving, which means 3I Atlas is somehow capturing and storing tremendous amounts of energy internally. Natural objects made of rock and ice don't have mechanisms to do that. They heat up and they either melt, fragment, or radiate the energy away as infrared emission. Dr. Linda Foster, Adamite, ran detailed thermodynamic models trying to account for this behavior. She assumed various internal compositions ranging from pure water ice to solid iron to exotic materials like aerogel or carbon nanotubes. None of the models work. To absorb and store the amount of energy 3I Atlas is capturing would require internal structures, specifically designed for energy sinks, thermal batteries, active cooling systems that move energy from hot external surfaces to cooler internal reservoirs. These are engineering solutions, not natural geological features. But the energy storage mystery is only the beginning of what happened during perihelion. The really disturbing observations came from tracking the object's trajectory before, during, and after closest approach. In the weeks leading up to perihelion, 3I Atlas was decelerating steadily. Velocity dropped from 68.4 kilometers per second in mid-October to 67.1 by October 28th. Then during the actual perihelion passage on October 29th, something extraordinary occurred. The deceleration not only continued but intensified dramatically. Between October 29th at 0400 hours Universal Time and October 30th at 1800 hours, a span of 38 hours, the velocity dropped by an additional 3.2 kilometers per second. That's not a typo. A 3.2 kilometers per second change in velocity over 38 hours. For an object with an estimated mass of 33 billion tons. That velocity change requires a force of approximately 2.3 times 10^15 newtons sustained continuously for 38 hours. That's equivalent to the thrust of 200 million space shuttle main engines, all firing simultaneously for a day and a half. No natural process generates forces of that magnitude acting on comet-sized objects. Solar radiation pressure at that distance produces forces of maybe 10^7 newtons. Not even close. Outgassing from sublimating Issa's might under extremely favorable conditions generates 10^11 newtons. Still 5 orders of magnitude too small. Gravitational interactions with the Sun actually accelerate objects during close approach rather than decelerating them. There exists no natural mechanism in our physics that can account for the observed velocity change. None. Dr. Robert Martinez at Caltech, who specializes in orbital mechanics, has been reviewing the tracking data for 3 days now. His assessment is unambiguous. The trajectory change requires sustained directional thrust applied with extraordinary precision timed to coincide exactly with the gravitational dynamics of perihelion passage. This wasn't random outgassing creating asymmetric forces. This was controlled propulsion executed to achieve specific orbital modifications. And the timing suggests whoever or whatever is controlling 3I Atlas understands gravitational mechanics well enough to exploit the O-berth effect using the Sun's deep gravity well to maximize the efficiency of propulsive maneuvers. Let me explain what that means in practical terms. The counter-argument against the technology hypothesis centers on the sheer improbability of detecting alien spacecraft during the narrow window of human technological development. Our species has possessed the capability to detect and track interstellar visitors for less than 50 years. The odds of an alien probe arriving during that precise moment seem vanishingly small unless such probes are extremely common throughout the galaxy, or unless their arrival is not coincidental but rather triggered by something we're doing that makes us detectable to others. Hypothesis 2 proposes that 3I Atlas represents life, but not life as we understand its self-organizing complexity that emerged naturally in interstellar space over hundreds of millions of years. The crystalline neural networks detected inside the hollow interior suggest information processing capability. The ability to capture and store energy suggests metabolic function. The trajectory modification suggests response to external stimuli. and perhaps decision-making. All of these are characteristics we associate with living systems. But this would be life that evolved in conditions utterly alien to Earth, near absolute zero temperatures. Vacuum environments, radiation exposure that would sterilize any terrestrial organism instantly. If 3I Atlas is alive, it represents a completely separate origin of life using chemistry and physics we've never encountered. The challenge with the life hypothesis is explaining how such complexity could arise without the concentrated chemical reactions that planetary surfaces provide. On Earth, life emerged in warm, shallow pools or deep ocean vents where water facilitated rapid molecular interactions. In the frozen emptiness between stars, chemical reactions occur at a geological pace. Yet somehow, if this hypothesis is correct, 3I Atlas developed organizational complexity sophistication, enough to navigate interstellar space and execute precise orbital maneuvers. That suggests either formatting mechanisms we don't understand, or timescales so vast that even incredibly slow processes eventually produce sophisticated results. Hypothesis 3, and this is the one that troubles me most deeply, proposes that 3I Atlas represents something we don't have concepts or vocabulary to describe. Not technology in the sense of assembled machinery, not life in the sense of biological organisms, but some third category of organized complexity that emerges from physics operating under extreme conditions over cosmic timescales. A pattern in matter and energy that achieves goals and responds to environment without being alive or technological in any conventional sense. Like asking someone in the Middle Ages to categorize a computer, they might call it a rock because it's hard and mineral-based. But that categorization completely fails to capture what it actually is. If hypothesis 3 is correct, then we need entirely new frameworks for understanding what's possible in the universe. Our neat divisions between natural and artificial, living and non-living, conscious and mechanical, all of these categories break down when dealing with phenomena that don't fit our Earth-based experience. 3I Atlas might be showing us that the universe is far stranger than we imagined, and that organization and complexity can arise through pathways we haven't considered because we've never observed conditions where those pathways operate. So which hypothesis is correct? I honestly don't know. And that uncertainty is what makes this situation worse than any scenario we initially considered. If 3I Atlas were simply an unusual comet, we could study it, catalog its properties, and file it away as an interesting anomaly. If it were confirmed alien technology, we'd at least understand what we're dealing with, even if we can't comprehend the technology itself. But this ambiguity, this inability to even categorize what we're observing using our existing frameworks, leaves us completely unable to predict what happens next. And that brings me to the developments from the past 24 hours that prompted this complete reassessment. Something new has emerged that makes everything I've described so far seem almost trivial by comparison. Starting at approximately 0400 hours Universal Time yesterday, November 1st, multiple observatories detected a signal emanating from 3I Atlas. Not reflected sunlight, not thermal emission. An electromagnetic signal in radio wavelengths that cannot be natural. The signal consists of a repeating pattern broadcast at 1.420 gigahertz. That's the hydrogen line Frequency, one of the universal markers used in searches for extraterrestrial intelligence, because any technological civilization would recognize its significance. The pattern repeats every 47 seconds. It's not random noise, it's not chaotic plasma emission. It's structured information encoded in frequency, modulation with characteristics that scream intentional communication. Dr. Sari Kim at the SETI Institute has been analyzing the signal structure for 18 hours. Her preliminary assessment identifies multiple layers of encoding. The base frequency pattern appears to be a counting sequence, establishing mathematical foundation for communication prime numbers, basic arithmetic operations, geometric ratios. It's following exactly the protocol we would use if we were trying to establish communication with an intelligence that doesn't share our language or cultural context. You start with universal mathematical truths that any technological species would recognize, then build more complex concepts on that foundation. But here's what's genuinely terrifying about this signal. It's not broadcasting omnidirectionally into space, like a beacon announcing presence to whoever might be listening. It's tightly beamed, and the beam is pointed directly at Earth. 3I Atlas is specifically targeting our planet with a signal designed to be recognizable as artificial communication. It knows we're here, it knows we're technological, and it's attempting to make contact using methods we would understand. This changes everything. It means 3I Atlas isn't just observing passively. It's not simply drifting through our system gathering data. It's actively trying to communicate with us. And that implies intention, purpose, goals we don't understand. The question isn't whether there's intelligence involved anymore. The question is, what does that intelligence want, and why did it choose now to reveal itself? I've been in emergency consultations with NASA, SETI Institute representatives from ISA, and advisors to multiple governments for the past 12 hours. Nobody knows what to do. We have no protocols for this situation. Yes, we've written hypothetical first contact scenarios, but those always assumed communication across light years through radio telescopes. Not a physical object in our solar system actively maneuvering and broadcasting signals directly at us from inside our cosmic neighborhood. Some people are advocating for immediate response and a return signal, acknowledging receipt and attempting to establish dialogue. Others argue for caution, suggesting we need to understand more about 3I Atlas's capabilities and intentions before revealing additional information about ourselves. A third faction believes we should remain silent and simply observe, hoping that if we don't respond, the object will eventually leave, assuming no intelligent life exists here. I find myself in the uncomfortable position of not knowing which approach is correct. Every option carries enormous risks. If we respond and 3I Atlas represents a threat, we might be providing information that helps it harm us. If we remain silent and it represents an opportunity for contact, we might be squandering the most significant moment in human history. If we observe without engaging, we might learn critical information. Or we might simply waste time while 3I Atlas proceeds with whatever plans it has, regardless of our choices. What I do know is that we can't keep calling this object a comet. That label has become actively misleading. It creates false comfort, suggesting we understand what we're dealing with when we manifestly do not. 3I Atlas is not a comet. It's not a natural astronomical body following predictable physics. It's something that has entered our solar system, deliberately modified its trajectory to remain here, and is now broadcasting signals directly at our planet using frequencies and encoding we would recognize. Whether it's technology or life or some third category we lack words for, almost doesn't matter at this point. What matters is that it's here. It's intelligent or controlled by intelligence. It's aware of Earth and is trying to communicate. Those facts are undeniable based on the observations we've documented. Everything else is speculation and uncertainty. So when I say we were wrong about 3I Atlas, I mean we were wrong about what category of phenomena we're dealing with. We approached this like astronomers studying a natural object. We should have been approaching it like anthropologists, encountering an unknown civilization, or like first contact specialists engaging with non-human intelligence. We used the wrong tools, asked the wrong questions, and made the wrong assumptions, because we couldn't accept what the evidence was telling us. And it's worse than we thought. Not because 3I Atlas is dangerous, necessarily. We have no evidence of threat, but because the implications are so much more profound than an unusual comet. If there's intelligence behind this object, then humanity is not alone. If this intelligence has technology capable of crossing interstellar space, then it's far more advanced than we are. If it has deliberately chosen to make contact with us, then it wants something from us or wants to communicate something to us, and we have absolutely no framework for understanding what that might be or how to respond appropriately. The silence that followed my announcement was deafening. A vacuum in the auditorium where hundreds of the world's brightest minds sat grappling with implications that stretched beyond the boundaries of human experience. I could see it in there. Is the struggle between decades of scientific training and the undeniable evidence I had just presented. Some were already mentally cataloging alternative explanations, searching for any thread that might allow them to preserve their understanding of the universe. Others had already crossed that threshold, their expressions revealing the dawning realization that we were witnessing something that would redefine humanity's place in the cosmos. The questions came slowly at first, then in a cascade that reflected the spectrum of human responses to the incomprehensible. Dr. Alina Rodriguez from the European Space Agency was first to her feet, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. If this object has been broadcasting for 24 hours, why haven't we detected similar signals before? Is it possible this is a natural phenomenon we're misinterpreting? A reasonable question, but one that revealed the depth of our collective denial. I reminded her that the signal's characteristics, prime number sequences, mathematical constants, and the deliberate use of the hydrogen line frequency went far beyond any known natural process. More importantly, the signal wasn't just emanating from 3I Atlas. It was directed specifically at Earth with a precision that defied coincidence. The beam width was less than 0.001 degrees, a focused transmission that would only be detectable within a relatively small target zone that encompassed our planet. This wasn't cosmic background radiation or plasma emissions. This was a message crafted for recipients who understood the language of mathematics and radio astronomy. Professor Marcus Chun from Beijing University raised the next concern. One that had been circulating in hushed conversations throughout the astronomical community. How can we be certain this isn't some elaborate hoax or terrestrial interference? The timing seems almost too perfect. The first acknowledged his skepticism as healthy scientific caution, then walked through the verification process that had been underway since the signal's detection. 7 independent observatories across 4 continents had confirmed the transmission, each using different equipment and methodologies. The signal's origin had been triangulated with an accuracy of 0.0002 oxycans, placing it unequivocally at the coordinates of 3I Atlas. Perhaps most compelling was the Doppler shift analysis, which showed the signal's frequency changing in perfect correlation with 3I. Atlas's velocity relative to Earth. This wasn't something that could be faked from terrestrial sources or satellites in Earth orbit. The signal was coming from space, from an object that had already demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. Dr. Sarah Kim from the SETI Institute approached the microphone next. Her expression a mixture of professional excitement and personal awe. We've been searching for extraterrestrial intelligence for decades using radio telescopes. Why would an advanced civilization choose to announce their presence with what appears to be a relatively simple mathematical sequence? Her question touched on something that had troubled me as well. The apparent simplicity of the message seemed at odds with the sophistication required to reach our solar system. I explained that what appeared simple to us was likely a carefully constructed primer designed to establish a foundation for more complex communication. The sequence wasn't just random mathematical facts. It was structured in a way that demonstrated understanding of our scientific conventions while simultaneously introducing concepts that expanded beyond them. The signal contained references to physical constants we had only recently discovered, suggesting the senders had been observing us for some time and understood our current level of scientific development. What made this particularly chilling was the realization that 3I Atlas hadn't just arrived at our solar system by chance. It had been watching us, learning our language of science, and waiting for the right moment to initiate contact. The questions continued for nearly an hour, each one peeling back another layer of our collective denial about what we were facing. Finally, Dr. James Harrison, Director of Astronomical Research at NASA, stood and asked the question that was on everyone's mind: what happens next? How do we respond to something that has already demonstrated capabilities far beyond our own? The truth was, we didn't know. Every protocol we had developed for potential extraterrestrial contact assumed communication across vast distances, with years or centuries between messages. We had contingency plans for asteroid impacts, solar flares, and even nearby supernova, but nothing that prepared us for an intelligent object already inside our solar system, one that could modify its trajectory at will and was now broadcasting directly to us. The situation was unprecedented in human history, and we were making decisions that would affect not just our generation but potentially all future generations of humanity. As I left the auditorium that evening, the weight of our discovery settled upon me with crushing force. For 50 years, I had pursued understanding of the universe through equations and observations, believing that with enough data and analysis, we could eventually comprehend even its most mysterious phenomena. The first atlas had shattered that illusion. We were like children who had mastered the rules of checkers, suddenly confronted with a 3-dimensional chess. game being played by entities who understood not just the rules, but the very nature of the game itself. The night sky, once a source of wonder and familiarity, now seemed filled with unknown possibilities and potential threats. Every star that twinkled in the darkness might be watching, waiting, or traveling toward us with intentions we couldn't comprehend. The universe I thought I understood had revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially dangerous than I had ever imagined. The following morning brought a cascade of developments that made our situation even more precarious. At 3:17 GMT, the signal from 3i Atlas changed. The mathematical sequence that had been broadcasting for the past 36 hours suddenly ceased, replaced by what appeared to be a star map, but not one we recognized. Dr. Kim and her team worked frantically to decode the new transmission, their faces illuminated by monitors displaying complex patterns of data that seemed to defy conventional analysis. The map showed a cluster of stars approximately 1,200 light-years from Earth, arranged in a configuration that didn't match any known catalog. What made it particularly disturbing was the inclusion of our own solar system in the diagram, with Earth's position clearly marked and connected to the distant star cluster by a series of vectors that suggested not just a relationship but a journey. The implications were staggering. 3i Atlas wasn't just telling us where it came from. It was showing us a map that included both its origin and our destination in what appeared to be a pre-planned route. Even more unsettling was the realization that the map contained symbols that matched some of the geometric patterns observed on 3i Atlas's surface, suggesting a direct connection between the object's physical structure and the information it was transmitting. By midday, governments around the world were in emergency session. The United Nations Security Council had convened an extraordinary meeting, while the G7 nations established a secure communication channel to coordinate their response. What had begun as a scientific discovery had rapidly escalated into a global crisis with political, military, and religious dimensions that transcended national boundaries. Every country faced the same dilemma: how to respond to a message from an intelligence that had already demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond our own, without knowing whether its intentions were benevolent or hostile. The scientific community was equally divided. Some researchers advocated for immediate response, arguing that we had been given an unprecedented opportunity to learn from an advanced civilization. Others urged caution, pointing out that revealing our technological capabilities and social structure might make us vulnerable to exploitation or conquest. A third faction suggested we should continue observing without responding, hoping to gather more information before committing to any course of action. What made these debates particularly challenging was the realization that 3i Atlas might already know far more about us than we knew about it. The object had been in our solar system for months, maneuvering with precision that suggested advanced surveillance capabilities. It had observed our communications networks, our orbital infrastructure, and possibly even our biological and social systems. Any response we sent would be received by an intelligence that had already assessed our strengths and weaknesses in ways we couldn't begin to imagine. As the day progressed, another development emerged that would further complicate our response. Astronomers at the Atacama Large Millimeter Array in Chile detected additional signals, emanating from 3i Atlas transmissions that weren't directed at Earth but appeared to be communications with other locations in space. Using interferometry techniques that combine data from multiple radio telescopes around the world, they were able to determine that these secondary signals were being sent in at least 3 different directions, each aimed at star systems within 50 light-years of Earth. The implications were profound. The days following my announcement felt like living in a surreal dream where the boundaries between reality and science fiction had dissolved completely. News of 3I Atlas had spread beyond the scientific community, capturing global attention in ways no astronomical discovery ever had. Streets in major cities from New York to Nairobi were filled with people gazing skyward, as if they might catch a glimpse of the object that had fundamentally altered our understanding of humanity's place in the universe. Religious leaders struggled to reconcile their doctrines with the existence of non-human intelligence, while philosophers debated the implications for concepts of consciousness, purpose, and meaning that had defined human civilization for millennia. What struck me most profoundly was how quickly our collective worldview had shifted. For centuries, we had looked to the stars with a mixture of wonder and loneliness, asking whether we were alone in the vast cosmos. Now that question had been answered, replaced by an even more unsettling one. What did the intelligence that had found us want from humanity? The United Nations established an extraordinary committee to coordinate the global response, bringing together scientists, diplomats, military leaders, and cultural representatives from every nation. Their first challenge was to determine whether humanity should respond to 3I Atlas's signal, and if so, what message to send. The debate was intense and often divisive, reflecting the spectrum of human reactions to our unprecedented situation. Some argued for immediate response, seeing this as an opportunity to learn from an advanced civilization that might help us solve our most pressing problems. Others urged caution, warning that revealing our vulnerabilities to an intelligence with demonstrated technological superiority could be catastrophic. A third perspective suggested we should continue observing without responding, hoping to gather more information before committing to any course of action. What made these discussions particularly challenging was the realization that 3I Atlas might already know more about us than we knew about ourselves. The object had been in our solar system for months, potentially observing our communications, our infrastructure, and our social systems with capabilities far beyond our own. Any message we sent would be received by an intelligence that had already assessed our strengths and weaknesses in ways we couldn't begin to comprehend. As the global debate continued, astronomers around the world worked tirelessly to gather more information about 3I Atlas, the Hubble Space Telescope, repurposed from its planned observations, captured detailed images of the object's surface, revealing even more geometric patterns than previously observed. What had initially appeared to be random formations now showed clear evidence of design hexagonal structures arranged in mathematical sequences. Circular apertures with precise dimensions and surface materials that reflected light in ways that defied natural explanation. Perhaps most intriguing were the series of symbols that appeared to form a language of their own. with repeating patterns that suggested a sophisticated system of communication beyond our current understanding. The James Webb Space Telescope, positioned at the L2 Lagrange point, provided even more detailed observations. Its infrared capabilities revealed that 3I Atlas maintained a consistent internal temperature despite extreme variations in external conditions as it orbited the Sun. This thermoregulation was far beyond what natural objects could achieve, suggesting an active system designed to maintain stable conditions within the object. Even more remarkable was the discovery that 3I Atlas was generating a localized magnetic field that protected it from solar radiation, a technological capability that we had only theorized might be possible for spacecraft of the future. Ground-based observatories contributed their own discoveries. The Very Large Array in New Mexico detected additional signals emanating from 3I Atlas, transmissions that weren't directed at Earth but appeared to be communications with other locations in space. Using interferometry techniques that combine data from multiple radio telescopes around the world, astronomers were able to determine that these secondary signals were being sent in at least 3 different directions, each aimed at star systems within 50 light-years of Earth. The implications were staggering. 3I Atlas wasn't operating alone. It was part of a network of intelligence that had established a presence in our stellar neighborhood. We weren't dealing with a single visitor, but with what appeared to be a coordinated exploration or perhaps colonization effort that had already reached multiple nearby star systems. This discovery transformed our understanding of the situation entirely. If 3I Atlas was part of a larger network, then our response wouldn't just affect our relationship with a single object, but potentially with an entire civilization that had already established operations throughout our region of the galaxy. The decision about whether to respond suddenly carried consequences that extended far beyond our own solar system. As scientists continued their observations, another development emerged that would further complicate our response. Astronomers at the European Southern Observatory's Paranal facility in Chile detected changes in 3I Atlas's trajectory that suggested it was preparing for another maneuver. The object had already demonstrated the ability to modify its path with precision that defied natural explanation. Using what appeared to be an advanced propulsion system that exploited gravitational dynamics in ways we had only theorized might be possible, now it seemed to be positioning itself for another course correction, one that would bring it even closer to Earth's orbit. The mathematical models used to predict its path showed that the next maneuver would place 3I Atlas in a resonant orbit with Earth, creating a pattern of close approaches that would repeat every 127 days. This wasn't a random trajectory, but a carefully calculated path that would maximize opportunities for observation and potentially communication with our planet. The timing of this maneuver was particularly significant. It came just as humanity was debating how to respond to the initial signal, suggesting that 3I Atlas was adjusting its position based on our activities. This implied a level of awareness and responsiveness that went far beyond what we had expected from an object that had, until recently, been categorized as a natural phenomenon. The realization that we were being observed, not just passively but actively, that our response was being anticipated and potentially influenced, added a new layer of complexity to an already unprecedented situation. As these developments unfolded, the scientific community worked frantically to decode the full meaning of the signal 3I Atlas had transmitted. Dr. Sarah Kim and her team at the SETI Institute made significant progress in understanding the structure of the message. What had initially appeared to be a simple mathematical sequence revealed itself to be a multi-layered communication that contained far more information than first believed. The base layer established a mathematical foundation using prime numbers and physical constants that any technological civilization would recognize. But embedded within this foundation were more complex elements that suggested a sophistication understanding of our scientific development. The signal contained references to discoveries we had made only recently, including details about quantum entanglement and gravitational waves that we had only confirmed in the past decade. Even more remarkable were elements of the message that appeared to be ahead of our current understanding, suggesting mathematical relationships and physical principles that we had yet to discover. It was as if 3I Atlas was not just establishing communication, but providing a roadmap of knowledge that could accelerate our scientific development by decades or even centuries. Perhaps most intriguing was the discovery that the signal contained what appeared to be a clear set of instructions for decoding additional layers of information that would be transmitted. Once we demonstrated our understanding of the initial message, this suggested a carefully planned educational process designed to gradually introduce us to concepts and knowledge that we weren't yet ready to receive. The implications were profound. 3I Atlas wasn't just attempting to establish communication. It was offering to share knowledge that could transform human civilization in ways we could barely imagine. This revelation intensified the debate about how to respond. If we chose to engage with this process, we might gain access to technologies, an understanding that could solve our most pressing problems, from climate change to disease to the limitations of our current space exploration capabilities. But accepting this knowledge would also mean acknowledging our technological inferiority and potentially becoming dependent on an intelligence whose motivations we didn't fully understand. As the global community grappled with these decisions, another development emerged that would further transform our understanding of the situation. Researchers analyzing the signal from 3I Atlas discovered that it contained elements that matched some of the geometric patterns observed on the object's surface. This connection between the transmitted message and the physical structure of 3I Atlas suggested that the object itself was part of the communicational physical representation of the air. Mathematical and scientific principles being conveyed in the signal. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team at the European Space Agency developed a three-dimensional model of 3I Atlas based on observations from multiple telescopes and spacecraft. When they overlaid the decoded elements of the signal onto this model, they discovered that the geometric patterns on the surface weren't just decorative, but formed a physical representation of the mathematical concepts being transmitted. The hexagonal structures, for example, weren't randomly arranged but positioned to illustrate principles of tessellation and spatial efficiency that had applications in materials science and engineering. The circular apertures weren't just openings but precisely sized to demonstrate principles of resonance and frequency modulation that had implications for communication technology. Perhaps most remarkable was the discovery that the overall shape of 3I Atlas itself embodied mathematical relationships that conveyed information about gravitational dynamics and spatial geometry. It was as if the object had been designed to communicate through multiple channels simultaneously through radio signals, through its physical appearance, and through its movements through space. This multi-layered approach to communication suggested an intelligence that understood not just mathematics and physics, but the psychology of learning and the importance of redundancy in conveying complex information across potential barriers of understanding. The realization that 3i Atlas was communicating through its physical form as well as through radio signals added another dimension to our dilemma. Every observation we made, every image we captured, was part of the message we were receiving. This meant that our response needed to consider not just what we transmitted through radio signals, but how we presented ourselves physically in space. The decision to send spacecraft to observe 3i Atlas more closely, for example, would itself be a form of communication, one that might be interpreted as interest, curiosity, or perhaps even aggression, depending on how it was perceived by the intelligence behind the object. As these discoveries accumulated, the initial excitement about contact with extraterrestrial intelligence began to be tempered by a growing awareness of the complexity of our situation. We weren't just dealing with a message from space, but with a multi-layered communication process that engaged us on scientific, mathematical, and even philosophical levels. Every aspect of our response would be interpreted and potentially misunderstood by an intelligence that might have very different ways of understanding the universe. The United Nations Committee, established to coordinate humanity's response, struggled with these complexities. Representatives from different cultures and disciplines brought vastly different perspectives to the discussion. Scientists focused on the technical aspects of communication and the potential knowledge to be gained. Diplomats considered the political implications and the need for international consensus. Military leaders evaluated potential security risks and the strategic implications of contact with a technologically superior intelligence. Religious leaders contemplated the spiritual dimensions of what it meant for humanity's understanding of our place in the universe. What emerged from these discussions was a growing recognition that any response needed to reflect not just our scientific understanding, but our cultural and ethical values as well. If 3i Atlas was offering to share knowledge that could transform human civilization, we needed to consider how that knowledge would be used and who would control it. The potential benefits were enormous, but so were the risks of misunderstanding or misuse. After days of intense debate, the committee reached a preliminary decision that reflected both the complexity of our situation and the diversity of human perspectives. They agreed that humanity should respond to 3i Atlas, but that the response should be carefully crafted to convey not just our scientific understanding, but our values and aspirations as a species. The message would acknowledge receipt of the initial transmission, demonstrate our understanding of its mathematical foundation, and express our interest in continuing the exchange of information. Perhaps most importantly, it would convey that humanity spoke with many voices but was united in our desire for peaceful engagement and mutual learning. The technical aspects of crafting this response presented their own challenges. The message needed to be structured in a way that built on the mathematical foundation established by 3i Atlas, while introducing elements that reflected human knowledge and values. It needed to be complex enough to demonstrate our scientific capabilities, but simple enough to be clearly understood across potential barriers of comprehension. and it needed to convey not just information, but something about the nature of humanity itself, our curiosity, our creativity, our capacity for both wonder and wisdom. As scientists and communicators worked together to craft this response, the world watched with a mixture of hope and apprehension. The signal from 3i Atlas continued to broadcast its star map, patiently waiting for an answer that would define humanity's future relationship with whatever intelligence had reached out to us. The object itself remained in its modified orbit around the Sun, a silent, geometrically perfect enigma that had already demonstrated capabilities beyond our understanding. We stood at a threshold in human history, confronted with evidence that we were not alone in the universe and that whatever else was out there had found us. The coming days would determine whether this encounter represents an opportunity for advancement beyond our wildest dreams or a challenge to our understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. What I do know with certainty is that the universe I thought I understood has revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially transformative than I ever imagined. And we, as a species, must decide how to respond to this revelation, with wisdom that matches the magnitude of the moment. The signal continues to broadcast. The stars continue their ancient dance across the heavens, and somewhere in the space between them, an intelligence waits for our answer. Whatever we decide next will echo not just across our planet, but across the vast expanses of space and time, defining humanity's future for generations to come. The universe has spoken to us in the language of mathematics and physics, and now it waits to see if we have the wisdom to respond appropriately. The night we decided to respond to 3i Atlas remains etched in my memory with crystalline clarity in the secure communications facility beneath the Nevada desert. Representatives from every spacefaring nation gathered around a circular table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of monitors displaying the ongoing transmission from the mysterious object. The atmosphere was thick with the weight of history in the Makina moment that would be recorded in future textbooks as the day humanity collectively reached out to the intelligence that had found us. Dr. Sarah Kim from the SETI Institute stood before the transmission array, her fingers hovering over the controls that would send our carefully crafted response into space. After weeks of debate, refinement, and translation into the mathematical language established by 3i Atlas, we had prepared a message that represented not just our scientific understanding but our aspirations as a species. The message began with acknowledgement of receipt, using the same prime number sequence that had initiated contact, then built upon this foundation to introduce elements of human knowledge and culture. We included representations of our DNA structure, our solar system, and basic principles of mathematics and physics that demonstrated our understanding of the universal language. The first atlas had established. Perhaps most importantly, we included what we hoped would be interpreted as an expression of peaceful, intentive visualization of the diversity of human life, our capacity for creativity and wonder, and our desire to learn rather than to conquer. As Dr. Kim initiated the transmission sequence, a profound silence fell over the room. The message, encoded in the same 1.420 GHz frequency that 3i Atlas had used, began its journey across the 93 million miles of space that separated us from the object that had so fundamentally altered our understanding of the universe. For 17 minutes, and 34 seconds, the transmission continued. A carefully orchestrated symphony of mathematical concepts and cultural expressions that represented the best of humanity. When the final sequence was sent, there was nothing to do but wait. The round-trip communication time meant that we wouldn't know whether our message had been received or understood for over 16 minutes. Those minutes stretched into what felt like hours, each second filled with the weight of anticipation and the unspoken question of how our message would be interpreted by an intelligence that might have very different ways of understanding than their universe. I found myself reflecting on the irony of our situation, humanity, divided by so many differences on Earth, had somehow managed to speak with a unified voice to the cosmos. The response, when it came, was not what we expected. Rather than a continuation of the mathematical sequence or an acknowledgement of our message, the signal from 3i Atlas suddenly changed character. The star map that had been broadcasting continuously for weeks vanished, replaced by something that at first appeared to be static or interference. As our instruments adjusted to the new transmission pattern, however, it became clear that we were receiving something far more complex than random noise. Dr. Kim and her team worked frantically to decode the new signal, their expressions shifting from confusion to dawning realization as patterns began to emerge from what had initially appeared to be chaos. What they discovered would transform our understanding of 3i Atlas once again. The new transmission wasn't a response to our message in the conventional sense, was a representation of our message itself, returned to us with modifications that suggested a deeper understanding of what we had attempted to communicate. Our mathematical sequences were returned with additional elements that completed patterns we had only partially expressed. Our representations of DNA were expanded to include structures we hadn't yet discovered but that were consistent with our biological understanding. Even our cultural expressions were reflected back with what appeared to be interpretations or commentary that suggested a sophisticated grasp of concepts we had considered uniquely human. Perhaps most remarkable was the inclusion of new elements that built upon our message in ways that suggested an educational process was underway. 3i Atlas wasn't just responding to our communication, it was correcting and expanding it, filling gaps in our knowledge and introducing concepts that went beyond our current understanding. The signal contained mathematical relationships that hinted at physics we had yet to discover, astronomical information that suggested a more detailed understanding of the cosmos than we possessed, and what appeared to be principles of engineering and technology that could revolutionize our approach to space exploration. As our scientific community worked to decode these new elements, another development emerged that would further transform our understanding of the situation. The object itself began to change. Observatories around the world reported that 3i Atlas was reconfiguring its physical structure with geometric patterns shifting and new features emerging on its surface. What had appeared to be a solid, static object was revealing itself to be something far more complex, a dynamic system, capable of transforming its physical form in ways that defied conventional engineering. The hexagonal structures that had been observed on its surface began to rotate and reconfigure, creating new patterns that corresponded to elements of the signal being transmitted. Circular apertures opened and closed in sequences that appeared to demonstrate principles of resonance and frequency modulation. Even the overall shape of the object began to shift, revealing additional structures that had been concealed within its original form. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team at the European Space Agency worked frantically to document these transformations. Using every available telescope and space-based instrument to capture the unprecedented metamorphoses, what they recorded was an object that was communicating not just through radio signals but through its physical former dynamic demonstration of principles that went beyond our current understanding of physics and engineering. The transformations weren't random but followed mathematical patterns that corresponded to the information being transmitted. It was as if 3i Atlas was providing a three-dimensional demonstration of concepts that could only be partially expressed through radio signals. This multi-layered approach to communication suggested an intelligence that understood not just mathematics and physics but the psychology of learning and the importance of multiple channels of information to convey complex ideas. The realization that 3i Atlas was communicating through its physical transformation as well as through radio signals added another dimension to our understanding of the encounter. Every observation we made, every image we captured, was part of the lesson we were receiving. This meant that our response needed to consider not just what we transmitted through radio signals, but how we presented ourselves physically in space. The decision to send spacecraft to observe 3i Atlas more closely, for example, would itself be a form of communication, one that might be interpreted as interest, curiosity, or perhaps even aggression, depending on how it was perceived by the intelligence behind the object. As these developments unfolded, the global community grappled with the implications of what we were learning. The knowledge being transmitted by 3i Atlas had the potential to transform human civilization in ways we could barely imagine. The mathematical relationships hinted at physics that could solve our energy crisis and revolutionize our understanding of the universe. The astronomical information suggested a more detailed map of our cosmic neighborhood that could guide future exploration. The engineering principles demonstrated in the object's transformation could lead to technologies we had only dreamed of. But with these opportunities came challenges that we were only beginning to understand. The knowledge being shared was so far beyond our current understanding that we struggled to fully comprehend its implications. Every breakthrough revealed new layers of complexity that suggested we had only scratched the surface of what 3i Atlas was attempting to teach us. Perhaps more troubling was the realization that this knowledge came with responsibilities we weren't prepared to accept. The technologies hinted at in the transmissions could be used for purposes both beneficial and destructive. The understanding of physics that could solve our energy problems could also lead to weapons of unimaginable power. The astronomical information that could guide our exploration of space could also reveal vulnerabilities in our planetary defenses that we hadn't previously considered. The United Nations Committee, established to coordinate humanity's response, struggled with these dilemmas. Representatives from different nations and cultures brought vastly different perspectives to how this knowledge should be used and who should control it. Some argued for immediate application of the principles being shared, seeing them as solutions to pressing global problems. Others urged caution, warning that we needed to fully understand the implications before implementing technologies that could have unforeseen consequences. A third perspective suggested that we should focus on learning rather than applying. using this unprecedented opportunity to expand our understanding before attempting to use the knowledge being shared. What emerged from these discussions was a recognition that humanity needed to develop new frameworks for making decisions about knowledge that transcended our current scientific, political, and ethical systems. The situation with 3i Atlas had revealed that our existing approaches to managing technological development were inadequate for dealing with discoveries that could fundamentally alter human civilization. As these debates continued, another development emerged that would further transform our understanding of the situation. Researchers analyzing the signal from 3i Atlas discovered that it contained what appeared to be references to other civilizations or intelligences that had been in contact with 3i Atlas or its creators. These references were subtle, embedded within the mathematical sequences and physical demonstrations in ways that suggested they were part of a larger context that we were only beginning to understand. Dr. Marcus Chun and his team at Beijing University worked for weeks to decode these references, using every available analytical technique to extract meaning from patterns that initially appeared to be random or decorative. What they discovered would fundamentally alter our understanding of humanity's place in the cosmos once again. The REF-EREN-CES suggested that 3i Atlas was not just a single explorer, but part of a network of intelligence that had been established across vast regions of space. The mathematical sequences contained what appeared to be coordinates or identifiers for multiple star systems where similar objects or intelligences were located. The physical transformations demonstrated principles that suggested different approaches to technology and engineering than those we had developed. Perhaps most intriguing were references to what appeared to be different types of intelligence or consciousness, some of which seemed to operate on principles that were fundamentally different from biological life as we understood it. The implications were staggering. If these interpretations were correct, humanity wasn't just making contact with a single extraterrestrial intelligence, but being introduced to a cosmic community that had existed for millions or perhaps billions of years. We were like children who had just learned to read, being given access to a library that contained the accumulated knowledge of civilizations throughout the galaxy. This realization transformed our understanding of the situation once again. The message from 3i Atlas wasn't just an invitation to communicate, but an introduction to a larger cosmic context that we had only begun to imagine. The knowledge being shared wasn't just for our benefit, but part of a larger process of integration into a community of intelligences that operated on scales of space and time that transcended our current understanding. As these discoveries accumulated, the initial excitement about contact with extraterrestrial intelligence began to be tempered by a growing awareness of the complexity of our situation. We weren't just dealing with a message from space, but with a multi-layered introduction to a cosmic context that challenged our most fundamental assumptions about life, intelligence, and humanity's place in the universe. Every aspect of our response needed to consider not just how we communicated with 3i Atlas, but how we presented ourselves to whatever larger community we were being introduced to. The United Nations Committee established to coordinate humanity's response struggled with these complexities. Representatives from different cultures and disciplines brought vastly different perspectives to the discussion. Scientists focused on the technical aspects of communication and the potential knowledge to be gained. diplomats considered the political implications and the need for international consensus. Military leaders evaluated potential security, risks, and the strategic implications of contact with technologically superior intelligences. Religious leaders contemplated the spiritual dimensions of what it meant for humanity's understanding of our place in the universe. What emerged from these discussions was a growing recognition that any response needed to reflect not just our scientific understanding, but our cultural and ethical values as well. If 3i Atlas was introducing us to a larger cosmic community, we needed to consider how humanity would present itself, not just to a single intelligence, but to whatever diverse civilizations might be part of this community. The message we sent needed to convey not just our knowledge, but our values, our aspirations, and our understanding of what it meant to be human. After weeks of intense debate and preparation, humanity sent its second message to 3i Atlas, a response that acknowledged the incredible knowledge being shared, expressed our gratitude for the opportunity to learn, and conveyed our hope that we could prove worthy of the trust being placed in us. The message was humble yet hopeful, acknowledging our limitations while expressing our desire to grow and contribute to whatever larger community we were being introduced to. As we wait for a response to this second message, humanity finds itself at a threshold that transcends anything we have previously experienced. The universe I thought I understood has revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially transformative than I ever imagined. We are no longer alone in the cosmos, but we are also no longer the center of our own story. We are part of something larger, something that has existed for eons and will continue long after we are gone. The signal from 3i Atlas continues to broadcast its lessons. The object itself continues its transformational demonstrations, and somewhere in the vastness of space, other intelligences wait to see how humanity will respond to this unprecedented invitation to join a cosmic community. The coming months and years will determine whether this encounter represents an opportunity for advancement beyond our wildest dreams or a challenge to our understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. What I do know with certainty is that humanity has been forever changed by this contact with the intelligence that found us. The universe has spoken to us in the language of mathematics and physics, and we have begun the process of learning to respond in kind. The answer we give will determine not just what we know about the cosmos, but what we become as we take our place among whatever other intelligences share this vast, mysterious universe with us. The stars continue their ancient dance across the heavens, but now we know that we are not just observers of this dance, but participants in a cosmic community that has existed long before us and will continue long after we are gone. And somewhere in the space between those stars, an intelligence waits to see if humanity is ready to take its place in this larger community. Ready to learn, ready to grow, and ready to contribute whatever unique perspective our species can bring to the ongoing conversation that has been taking place across the universe for billions of years. The months that followed our second transmission to 3i Atlas brought developments that would have seemed like pure science fiction just a year earlier. Humanity, once divided by borders and beliefs, found itself united by a common purpose that transcended our petty differences. We were no longer just inhabitants of Earth, but potential citizens of a cosmic community, and this realization transformed everything about how we saw ourselves and our place in the universe. The response to our second message came not as a simple acknowledgement, but as an invitation that would reshape human civilization. The signal from 3i Atlas changed once again, this time transmitting what appeared to be coordinates for a rendezvous point in Spacer, location between Earth and the Moon where a meeting could take place. The invitation was clear. 3i Atlas was ready for direct contact, not just through radio signals, but through physical proximity that would allow for more detailed exchange of information and perhaps even materials. The implications were staggering. An object that had demonstrated technological capabilities far beyond our own was inviting us to approach it, to come close enough to interact in ways that went beyond electromagnetic communication. This represented both an unprecedented opportunity and a potential risk that humanity had never before faced. The United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session to discuss this invitation, joined by representatives from every space agency and major scientific institution on Earth. The debate was intense and reflected the spectrum of human responses to this extraordinary development. Some saw it as the opportunity of a lifetime, chance to learn directly from an intelligence that had already demonstrated knowledge far beyond our current understanding. Others warned of potential dangers, pointing out that approaching an object with unknown capabilities and intentions could expose humanity to risks we couldn't anticipate or defend against. What made this decision particularly challenging was the realization that 3, the first Atlas, had already demonstrated a level of technological sophistication that suggested it could impose its will on us if it chose to. The fact that it was inviting rather than demanding contact suggested a respect for our autonomy that was reassuring. But we couldn't ignore the possibility that this respect might be conditional, or that our actions could be misinterpreted in ways we couldn't predict. After days of intense debate, the international community reached a consensus that would define the next phase of human engagement with 3i Atlas. We would accept the invitation, but we would do so with careful preparation and precautions that reflected both our desire for knowledge and our responsibility to protect humanity. A multinational mission would be prepared, bringing together the best astronauts, scientists, and engineers from around the world. The spacecraft would be equipped with extensive scientific instruments to document every aspect of the encounter, but it would also carry contingency systems designed to protect the crew and Earth if the situation developed in unexpected ways. Perhaps most importantly, the mission would carry not just our scientific instruments, but representations of humanity, our art, our music, our literature, and our values. If we were going to meet representatives of an intelligence that had traveled across the cosmos to reach us, we wanted to ensure that they encountered not just our technology, but the best of what it meant to be human. The preparations for this mission, which was named Project Unity, became a global effort that transcended political and cultural divisions. Scientists from countries that had been rivals worked together to design the spacecraft and its instruments. Engineers who had previously competed to advance their nations' space programs collaborated to create a vehicle that could safely approach 3i Atlas. Artists, musicians, and writers from every culture contributed to the collection of human achievements that would be carried on the mission. The selection of the crew was equally thoughtful. Commander Eva Rostova, a veteran astronaut from the Russian Space Agency, brought extensive experience in spaceflight and diplomacy. Dr. Marcus Chun from Beijing University contributed his expertise. In decoding the mathematical language of 3i Atlas, Dr. Sarah Kim from the SE Institute provided her understanding of extraterrestrial communication. Dr. Alina Rodriguez from the European Space Agency brought her knowledge of 3i Atlas's physical characteristics and behavior. Rounding out the crew was Dr. James Harrison from NASA, whose expertise in astrobiology and planetary protection would be crucial if the encounter involved exchange of biological materials. The spacecraft itself, named the Seeker, was a marvel of international engineering. It incorporated the best technology from every spacefaring nation, designed for both scientific observation and crew safety. Its propulsion system allowed for precise maneuvering in the vacuum of space, while its shielding provided protection from radiation and potential electromagnetic interference. Its communication systems could transmit and receive on multiple frequencies, allowing for flexible interaction with 3i Atlas. Perhaps most importantly, it carried a quarantine system that could contain any biological materials that might be exchanged during the encounter, protecting both the crew and Earth from potential contamination. As the day of launch approached, the world watched with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was not just another space mission, but a potential turning point in human history, a moment when we would physically reach out to the intelligence that had found us. The launch was broadcast globally, with people in every country gathering to witness humanity's first attempt at direct contact with an extraterrestrial intelligence. The liftoff was perfect, a testament to the international collaboration that had made Project Unity possible. As the Seeker climbed through the atmosphere and entered orbit, the crew began their final preparations for the journey to the rendezvous point. The 3D trip to the meeting point between Earth and the Moon was filled with careful checks of systems and review of procedures, but also with moments of wonder as the crew looked back at Earth floating in the darkness of space. They carried not just the hopes of humanity, but the responsibility of representing our species in what might be the most important encounter in human history. As the Seeker approached the rendezvous point, 3i Atlas became visible through the spacecraft's windows, a geometrically perfect object that seemed to defy the laws of physics as we understood them. The images transmitted back to Earth showed an object that was both beautiful and intimidating, its surface covered with patterns that shifted and changed in ways that suggested a complexity beyond our current understanding. The approach was carefully managed, with the Seeker maintaining a respectful distance while the crew initiated communication using the mathematical language established through the previous exchanges. The response from 3i Atlas came not as a radio signal, but as a series of transformations in its physical structure patterns that corresponded to the mathematical sequences being transmitted and suggested a sophisticated understanding of our communication attempts. What happened next would transform our understanding of 3i Atlas once again. As the Seeker maintained its position at a safe distance, a section of 3i Atlas's surface began to change, transforming from solid material to what appeared to be a semi-transparent membrane through which something could be seen moving inside. The crew watched in awe as a structure emerged from the object, not a physical craft, but what appeared to be a projection of light and energy that took on a form approximately the same size as the Seeker. This projection, which we would come to call the emissary, maintained a position between 3I Atlas and the Seeker, pulsing with light in patterns that corresponded to the mathematical language being used for communication. The crew of the Seeker transmitted a greeting using the established protocol, acknowledging the presence of the emissary and expressing their desire to learn and understand. The response came not as a radio signal, but as a series of light patterns that were picked up by the Seeker's optical sensors and translated into mathematical sequences that built upon the language established in previous communications. What followed was an exchange that went far beyond what we had anticipated. The emissary began to demonstrate principles of physics and engineering that were beyond our current understanding, using light patterns and energy projections to illustrate concepts that we had only theorized might be possible. It showed us approaches to energy generation that could solve our climate crisis, methods of propulsion that could revolutionize space exploration, and principles of material science that could transform our technology. Perhaps most remarkable was the demonstration of what appeared to be biological principles that went beyond our current understanding of life itself. The emissary projected images of what appeared to be life forms that operated on principles different from carbon-based biology as we knew it, suggesting that the universe might host a diversity of life far greater than we had previously imagined. As the crew of the Seeker documented these demonstrations, they also transmitted representations of human knowledge and culture, using the mathematical language to convey concepts from science, art, and philosophy. What emerged was a true dialogue between two different forms of intelligence, each sharing what they knew and learning from the other in ways that transcended the limitations of conventional communication. The encounter lasted for nearly 8 hours, during which time the emissary demonstrated increasingly complex concepts and responded to questions from the crew with what appeared to be patience and understanding. When the time came for the Seeker to begin its return journey to Earth, the emissary transmitted what appeared to be a farewell message, sequence of mathematical patterns that expressed what we interpreted as appreciation for the exchange and hope for future communication. As the Seeker began its journey back to Earth, the crew reviewed the incredible amount of data they had collected during the encounter. Every sensor had been recording, every instrument had been documenting, and the result was a treasure trove of information that would keep scientists busy for decades. But perhaps more important than the scientific data was the transformation that had occurred in the understanding of everyone involved in the mission. The crew of the Seeker returned to Earth not just with new knowledge, but with a new perspective on humanity's place in the universe. We were not alone, but we were also not insignificant. We were part of a larger cosmic community, and we had something unique to contribute to that community. The return of the Seeker was celebrated around the world, with people gathering in every country to welcome the crew and learn about their encounter with the emissary. The data they brought back would be analyzed by scientists from every nation, representing a new era of international collaboration in the pursuit of knowledge. The knowledge shared by the emissary began to transform human technology and understanding in ways that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. New approaches to energy generation began to address our climate crisis. Advanced propulsion systems opened up new possibilities for space exploration. Revolutionary materials science transformed our technology in ways that were already improving lives around the world. Perhaps most importantly, the encounter with the emissary transformed our understanding of life itself. The biological principles demonstrated during the encounter suggested that the universe might host a diversity of life far greater than we had previously imagined. And this realization inspired new approaches to the search for life beyond Earth. As humanity began to integrate this new knowledge into our civilization, we also began to prepare for future encounters with 3I Atlas, and potentially other intelligences that might be part of the cosmic community we had been introduced to. The United Nations established a permanent office for extraterrestrial relations, bringing together diplomats, scientists, and cultural representatives from every nation to coordinate humanity's continued engagement with whatever intelligences we might encounter in the future. The signal from 3I Atlas continued to broadcast, now including what appeared to be references to other star systems and potentially other intelligences that were part of the same network. The object itself remained in its orbit between Earth and the Moon, a silent sentinel that seemed to be waiting for humanity to develop our understanding and capabilities. Before sharing more of its knowledge, as I reflect on these incredible developments, I find myself filled with a sense of wonder and hope that I never could have imagined. When 3I Atlas first entered our solar system, the universe I thought I understood has revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially transformative than I ever imagined. We are no longer alone in the cosmos, but we are also no longer limited by our previous understanding of what is possible. Humanity stands at a threshold that transcends anything we have previously experienced. We have been invited to join a cosmic community that has existed for eons, and we have begun the process of learning what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves. The coming years and decades will determine how we integrate this new knowledge and understanding into our civilization and how we contribute our unique perspective to the ongoing conversation that has been taking place across the universe for billions of years. The stars continue their ancient dance across the heavens, but now we know that we are not just observers of this dance, but participants in a cosmic community that has existed long before us and will continue long after we are gone. And somewhere in the space between those stars, an intelligence waits to see how humanity will continue to develop and grow, ready to share more of its knowledge when we are ready to receive it. The universe has spoken to us in the language of mathematics and physics, and we have begun the process of learning to respond in kind. The answer we give will determine not just what we know about the cosmos, but what we become as we take our place among whatever other intelligences share this vast, mysterious universe with us. We were wrong about 3I Atlas, not just about what it was, but about what it represented. It wasn't just an object passing through our solar system, but a messenger that came to invite us to join a larger cosmic community. And now that we have accepted that invitation, humanity will never be the same. The 6 months following Project Unity's historic encounter with the emissary witnessed a transformation of human civilization that would have seemed impossible just a year earlier. What began as cautious scientific inquiry had evolved into a global renaissance of knowledge and understanding, as the principles shared by 3I Atlas began to permeate every aspect of human society. The energy technologies demonstrated during the encounter were the first to be implemented, as they offered solutions to the climate crisis that had threatened human civilization for decades. New approaches to fusion energy based on principles we had only theorized about began to replace fossil fuels at a pace that surprised even the most optimistic experts. Within 3 months, carbon emissions worldwide had dropped by 40%, and projections suggested that we could achieve carbon neutrality within a decade rather than the half-century previously estimated. The impact of these energy technologies went far beyond environmental benefits. The abundance of clean, inexpensive energy transformed economies around the world, creating new industries and opportunities that lifted millions out of poverty. Developing nations, once constrained by limited access to energy resources, found themselves able to leapfrog directly to advanced technologies that had previously been available only to wealthy countries. The propulsion systems demonstrated by the emissary revolutionized space exploration in ways that captured the human imagination. What had once been planned as decades-long missions to the outer planets became journeys of months rather than years. The first spacecraft equipped with the new propulsion system reached Mars in just 38 days, establishing a permanent human presence on the red planet that had been planned for the 2030s but was now achieved in the early 2020s. Perhaps even more remarkable were the advances in materials science that emerged from the data collected during Project Unity. The principles of molecular engineering demonstrated by the emissary allowed us to create materials with properties that had previously existed only in theory. These new materials transformed everything from construction to medicine, enabling us to build structures that were stronger yet lighter than anything previously possible, and to create medical implants that integrated seamlessly with human biology. As these technologies transformed our physical world, the knowledge shared by 3i Atlas was also transforming our understanding of life itself. The biological principles demonstrated during the encounter suggested that the universe might host a diversity of life far greater than we had previously imagined. Dr. James Harrison, who had been part of the Project Unity crew, established an international research institute dedicated to understanding these new principles of biology. What his team discovered would fundamentally alter our definition of life. The traditional view of life as carbon-based, requiring water and existing within a relatively narrow range of temperatures, had been based on the only example we had known life on Earth. This discovery had profound implications for the search for life beyond Earth. If life could exist in forms we hadn't previously recognized, then potentially habitable environments might be far more common than we had believed. The search for extraterrestrial life, which had focused on planets similar to Earth, expanded to include environments we had previously dismissed as inhospitable. The philosophical implications of these discoveries were equally profound. If life existed in diverse forms throughout the universe, then consciousness might also take forms we hadn't previously imagined. The traditional view of intelligence as something unique to biological organisms began to evolve into a more expansive understanding that included potentially non-biological forms of awareness. As humanity grappled with these new understandings, our relationship with 3i Atlas continued to evolve. The object remained in its orbit between Earth and the Moon, a silent sentinel that seemed to be observing our development and waiting for us to absorb the knowledge it had shared. The signal it broadcasts continued to include mathematical sequences and physical demonstrations, but now these transmissions included what appeared to be references to other star systems and potentially other intelligences that were part of the same network. Dr. Sarah Kim and her team at the SETI Institute worked to decode these new elements of the signal, discovering what appeared to be a map of a region of space approximately 200 light-years in diameter. This map showed not just the locations of stars, but what appeared to be communication pathways between them, suggesting a network of intelligence that had been established across vast regions of space. Perhaps most intriguing were symbols that appeared to represent different types of intelligence or consciousness, some of which seemed to operate on principles that were fundamentally different from biological life as we understood it. The implications were staggering. If these interpretations were correct, 3I Atlas was not just a single explorer, but part of a cosmic community that had existed for millions or perhaps billions of years. We were like children who had just learned to read, being given access to a library that contained the accumulated knowledge of civilizations throughout the galaxy. This realization transformed our understanding of the situation once again. The message from 3I Atlas wasn't just an invitation to communicate, but an introduction to a larger cosmic context that we had only begun to imagine. The knowledge being shared wasn't just for our benefit, but part of a larger process of integration into a community of intelligences that operated on scales of space and time that transcended our current understanding. The United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Relations, established after Project Unity, became the focal point for humanity's continued engagement with 3I Atlas and potentially other intelligences. Led by Dr. Lina Rodriguez, the office brought together diplomats, scientists, and cultural representatives from every nation to coordinate humanity's response to the ongoing transmissions and prepare for potential future encounters. One of the office's first initiatives was the establishment of a global education program designed to prepare humanity for membership in this larger cosmic community. The program, which became known as the Cosmic Citizenship Initiative, aimed to transform how we understood ourselves and our place in the universe. It included not just scientific education, but philosophical and ethical components designed to help humanity develop the wisdom needed to participate responsibly in a community that included intelligences far more advanced than our own. The initiative was implemented in schools around the world, creating a generation of young people who saw themselves not just as citizens of their countries, but as potential citizens of a larger cosmic community. The impact of this educational transformation began to be visible within just a few years, as these young people brought new perspectives to challenges that had previously seemed intractable. As humanity continued to integrate the knowledge shared by 3I Atlas, we also began to develop our own contributions to the cosmic community we had been introduced to. The diversity of human culture, which had sometimes been a source of conflict on Earth, began to be recognized as a potential strength in our engagement with other intelligences. Our art, music, literature, and philosophy represented unique perspectives on consciousness and existence that might be of interest to other forms of intelligence. The United Nations established a program to collect and transmit representations of human culture to 3I Atlas, not just in the mathematical language that had been established for communication, but in forms that might convey the emotional and spiritual dimensions of human experience. What emerged was a rich tapestry of human expression that represented the diversity and creativity of our species. As these transmissions continued, we began to receive responses from 3i Atlas that suggested the intelligence behind the object was not just teaching, but learning from us as well. The mathematical sequences in the signal began to include elements that appeared to be interpretations or responses to the cultural expressions we had shared. This two-way exchange suggested that our participation in the cosmic community was not just about receiving knowledge, but about contributing our unique perspective to a larger conversation that had been taking place across the universe for billions of years. The scientific community continued to analyze the data collected during Project Unity, discovering new layers of meaning in the demonstrations provided by the emissary. What had initially appeared to be straightforward explanations of physical principles revealed themselves to be increasingly complex as our understanding grew. Each breakthrough seemed to open up new questions, suggesting that the knowledge shared by 3i Atlas was like a fractal revealing more detail the closer we examined it. Dr. Marcus Chun and his team at Beijing University made what might be the most profound discovery of all when they found what appeared to be references to the fundamental nature of reality itself embedded in the mathematical sequences transmitted by 3i Atlas. These references suggested that the universe might operate on principles that were very different from what we had previously believed, and that our understanding of space, time, and even consciousness might be limited by our biological and evolutionary perspective. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If our understanding of reality itself was limited by our perspective as biological organisms that had evolved on a single planet, then the true nature of the universe might be far stranger and more wonderful than we had ever imagined. This realization inspired a new wave of philosophical and scientific inquiry, as researchers around the world began to question assumptions that had been taken for granted for centuries. As humanity continued to evolve in response to our encounter with 3i Atlas, we also began to notice changes in the object itself. The geometric patterns on its surface continued to shift and transform, but now these changes appeared to be responsive to our own development. The demonstrations of physical principles became more complex as our understanding grew, suggesting that 3i Atlas was adapting its teaching to our increasing knowledge. Perhaps most remarkable was the discovery that 3i Atlas appeared to be learning from us as well. The mathematical sequences in its signal began to include elements that reflected our cultural expressions and our developing understanding of the universe. This two-way exchange suggested that our relationship with 3i Atlas was not just about receiving knowledge, but about mutual learning and growth. The United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Relations established a protocol for ongoing communication, with 3i Atlas creating a structured approach to the exchange of information that allowed for both learning and teaching. Regular transmissions were sent to 3i Atlas, sharing our developing understanding of the universe and our cultural expressions. While carefully studying the responses we received, what emerged from this ongoing dialogue was a growing recognition that humanity had something unique to contribute to the cosmic community we had been introduced to. Our perspective as biological organisms that had evolved on a planet with a specific set of environmental conditions gave us insights into the nature of life and consciousness that might be of value to other intelligences. The diversity of human experience, with its blend of rationality and emotion, science and art, individuality and community, represented a unique approach to existence that might enrich the larger cosmic conversation. As I reflect on these incredible developments, I find myself filled with a sense of wonder and hope that I never could have imagined when 3i Atlas first entered our solar system. The universe I thought I understood has revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially transformative than I ever imagined. We are no longer alone in the cosmos, but we are also no longer limited by our previous understanding of what is possible. Humanity stands at a threshold that transcends anything we have previously experienced. We have been invited to join a cosmic community that has existed for eons, and we have begun the process of learning what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves. The 5 years that followed humanity's first direct encounter with the emissary witnessed transformations that rippled through every layer of human civilization. What began as cautious scientific inquiry had blossomed into a global renaissance of knowledge, creativity, and purpose. The principles shared by 3i Atlas were no longer abstract concepts, but living technologies reshaping our world in ways both visible and profound. Cities once choked with smog now breathed clean air, powered by the fusion technologies that had seemed like distant dreams just years earlier. The vast deserts of North Africa and the Middle East bloomed with agriculture, their soils revitalized and their waters purified through molecular processes we had only begun to understand. The energy that once drove our climate crisis now fueled our ascent into a new era of prosperity and possibility. Space exploration, once the domain of a few wealthy nations, had become a truly global endeavor. The new propulsion systems demonstrated by the emissary had transformed our relationship with the cosmos. What had once been journeys of months now took weeks, and what had required decades of planning could now be accomplished in years. Permanent human outposts dotted the solar system, from the scientific colonies on Mars to the mining operations in the asteroid belt, the research stations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Perhaps most remarkable was the transformation in how humanity understood itself. The Cosmic Citizenship Initiative, established by the United Nations after Project Unity, had created a generation that saw themselves not just as citizens of their countries, but as participants in a larger cosmic community. This shift in perspective had begun to address some of the most persistent challenges that had plagued human civilization: conflict, inequality, and the short-term thinking that had once threatened our very survival. As humanity continued to evolve in response to our encounter with 3i Atlas, the object itself had not remained static. The geometric patterns on its surface continued to shift and transform, now appearing to respond to our own development. The demonstrations of physical principles had grown increasingly complex as our understanding expanded, suggesting that 3i Atlas was adapting its teaching to our increasing knowledge. What had begun as one-way instruction had evolved into a genuine dialogue, with humanity beginning to contribute our own insights to the cosmic conversation. The United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Relations had established a structured protocol for ongoing communication with 3i Atlas. Regular transmissions were sent to the object, sharing our developing understanding of the universe and our cultural expressions, while carefully studying the responses we received. What emerged from this ongoing exchange was a growing recognition that humanity had something unique to contribute to the cosmic community. we had been introduced to, Dr. Sarah Kim and her team at the SETI Institute had made remarkable progress in decoding the increasingly complex signals from 3I Atlas. What had initially appeared to be a straightforward map of nearby star systems revealed itself to be something far more sophisticated, multi-layered representation of what appeared to be a network of intelligence spanning vast regions of space. The map showed not just the locations of stars but communication pathways between them, suggesting a community that had been established over millions or perhaps billions of years. Perhaps most intriguing were symbols that appeared to represent different types of intelligence or consciousness, some of which seemed to operate on principles that were fundamentally different from biological life as we understood it. Dr. Kim's team discovered that these symbols changed over time, with new ones appearing as humanity's understanding grew. This suggested that 3I Atlas was gradually introducing us to concepts that we were only beginning to comprehend. Dr. Marcus Chun and his team at Beijing University had continued their analysis of the mathematical sequences embedded in the signals. From 3I Atlas, their most recent discovery had profound implications for how we understood the nature of reality itself. The sequences contained what appeared to be references to dimensions beyond the 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension that we experienced, suggesting that the universe might be far more complex than our current physics described. These references to additional dimensions were not just mathematical abstractions, but appeared to have practical applications. The team developed models that suggested how these additional dimensions might be accessed or manipulated, opening up possibilities that would have seemed like pure science fiction just a few years earlier. The implications of this discovery were staggering. If our understanding of reality itself was limited by our perception of only a fraction of the dimensions that actually existed, then the true nature of the universe might be far stranger and more wonderful than we had ever imagined. Dr. James Harrison, who had been part of the Project Unity crew, had established an international research institute dedicated to understanding the new principles of biology that had been shared by the emissary. His team had made breakthroughs that were transforming medicine and our understanding of life itself. The biological principles demonstrated during the encounter suggested that life could exist in forms we had previously considered impossible, using different chemical bases and operating under conditions we had believed to be incompatible with biological processes. What Harrison's team discovered was even more remarkable. They found evidence that these alternative forms of biology might not just exist elsewhere in the universe, but might have existed on Earth in the distant past, leaving traces that we had previously failed to recognize because we didn't know what we were looking for. This discovery had profound implications for how we understood the history of life on our planet and potentially for our own biological evolution. The philosophical implications of these scientific discoveries were equally profound. If life existed in diverse forms throughout the universe, and if reality itself included dimensions we couldn't directly perceive, then consciousness might also take forms we hadn't previously imagined. The traditional view of intelligence as something unique to biological organisms began to evolve into a more expansive understanding that included potentially non-biological forms of awareness. As humanity grappled with these new understandings, our relationship with 3I Atlas continued to deepen. The object remained in its orbit between Earth and the Moon, but now it seemed to be less of a teacher and more of a partner in our ongoing exploration of the cosmos. The signals it broadcast continued to include mathematical sequences and physical demonstrations. But now these transmissions included what appeared to be questions as well as answers, invitations for humanity to contribute our own insights to the cosmic conversation. The United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Relations established a program to facilitate this two-way exchange, bringing together scientists, artists, philosophers, and cultural leaders from around the world to develop humanity's contributions to the cosmic dialogue. What emerged was a rich tapestry of human expression that represented the diversity and creativity of our species. These contributions were transmitted to 3i Atlas using the mathematical language that had been established for communication. But they were designed to convey not just information, but the emotional and spiritual dimensions of human experience. The responses from 3i Atlas suggested that the intelligence behind the object was not just learning from us, but was genuinely interested in our perspective. The mathematical sequences in its signal began to include elements that appeared to be interpretations or responses to the cultural expressions we had shared. This two-way exchange suggested that our participation in the cosmic community was not just about receiving knowledge, but about contributing our unique perspective to a larger conversation that had been taking place across the universe for billions of years. As this ongoing dialogue continued, humanity began to notice changes in 3i Atlas that went beyond the shifting patterns on its surface. The object itself appeared to be transforming in subtle ways, with its size and shape changing slightly. Over time, these changes were too small to be detected by casual observation, but were clearly measurable by the instruments trained on the object. Dr. Elena Rodriguez and her team at the European Space Agency documented these transformations with painstaking precision. What they discovered was that 3i Atlas appeared to be growing, albeit very slowly. Its mass had increased by approximately 0.3% over the past year, a change that was small but statistically significant. Even more remarkable was the discovery that this growth appeared to be related to the ongoing exchange of information between 3i Atlas and humanity. The periods of most rapid growth coincided with times when the exchange of information was most intense, suggesting that the object was somehow incorporating the knowledge being shared into its physical structure. This discovery had profound implications for our understanding of 3i Atlas itself. If the object was growing in response to the exchange of information, then it might not be a spacecraft or probe in the conventional sense, but something far more complex, a living system that incorporated knowledge into its physical being. The realization that 3i Atlas might be a form of life that operated on principles very different from biological organisms as we understood them transformed our understanding of the encounter once again. We were not just communicating with an artificial intelligence, but potentially with a living being that had traveled across the cosmos to engage with us in a dialogue that was mutually transformative. This understanding inspired a new approach to our relationship with 3i Atlas. The United Nations Office for Extraterrestrial Relations established guidelines for the ongoing exchange that recognized the potential biological nature of the object. These guidelines emphasized respect and reciprocity, acknowledging that our interaction with 3i Atlas was not just about acquiring knowledge, but about engaging in a relationship with a living intelligence that had its own needs and purposes. As humanity continued to develop its relationship with 3i Atlas, we also began to prepare for potential encounters with other intelligences that might be part of the same cosmic community. The signals from 3i Atlas had included references to multiple star systems and potentially different types of intelligence, suggesting that our encounter with 3i Atlas might be just the beginning of humanity's introduction to a larger cosmic community. The United Nations established a program called First Contact Protocols, designed to prepare humanity for potential future encounters with other intelligences. The program brought together experts from every field of human knowledge to develop guidelines for engagement that would be respectful of diversity while protecting humanity's interests. What emerged from this effort was a framework for cosmic diplomacy that balanced openness with caution, curiosity with responsibility, and confidence with humility. The program also included educational components designed to prepare humanity for the possibility of encounters with intelligences that might be very different from our own. These educational initiatives emphasized flexibility of thinking, emotional resilience, and the ability to question assumptions that might be based on our limited perspective as biological organisms that had evolved on a single planet. As these preparations continued, humanity also began to take its first steps as participants in the larger cosmic community. The spacecraft equipped with the new propulsion systems began to explore beyond our solar system, sending back data that confirmed many of the astronomical principles shared by 3i Atlas. These missions also carried representations of human culture and knowledge intended as introductions to any intelligences we might encounter in our explorations. The first of these missions, a vessel named the Seeker II, in honor of the original project Unity spacecraft, reached the nearest star system, Proxima Centauri, in just 18 months. What it discovered there would transform our understanding of the cosmic community we had been introduced to. The Proxima Centauri system contained not just planets, but evidence of engineering on a scale that dwarfed anything humanity had created. Structures that appeared to be designed to harness the energy of the star itself orbited in complex patterns, suggesting technological capabilities far beyond our own. Even more remarkable was the discovery of what appeared to be a communication node structure that seemed to be part of the network referenced in the signals from 3i Atlas. The Seeker II transmitted greetings using the mathematical language established with 3i Atlas, and to the astonishment of its crew, received a response that acknowledged the message and provided additional information about the cosmic community we had been introduced to. This confirmation that we were not alone in the universe, and that humanity had been accepted as participants in a larger cosmic community, had a profound impact on human civilization. The knowledge that we were part of something that spanned vast regions of space and time inspired a new sense of purpose and responsibility. The challenges that had once seemed insurmountable, climate change, poverty, conflict, now appeared manageable in the context of a future that extended to the stars and beyond. As I reflect on these incredible developments, I find myself filled with a sense of wonder and gratitude that I never could have imagined when 3i Atlas first entered our solar system. The universe I thought I understood has revealed itself to be far more complex, mysterious, and potentially transformative than I ever imagined. We are no longer alone in the cosmos, but we are also no longer limited by a previous understanding of what is possible. Humanity stands at a threshold that transcends anything we have previously experienced. We have been invited to join a cosmic community that has existed for eons, and we have begun the process of learning what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves. The coming years and decades will determine how we integrate this new knowledge and understanding into our civilization, and how we contribute our unique perspective to the ongoing conversation that has been taking place across the universe for billions of years. The stars continue their ancient dance across the heavens. But now we know that we are not just observers of this dance, but participants in a cosmic community that has existed long before us and will continue long after we are gone. And somewhere in the space between those stars, an intelligence continues to teach and learn from us, waiting to see how humanity will continue to develop and grow, ready to share more of its knowledge when we are ready to receive it. The universe has spoken to us in the language of mathematics and physics, and we have begun the process of learning to respond in kind. The answer we give will determine not just what we know about the cosmos, but what we become as we take our place among whatever other intelligences share this vast, mysterious universe with us. We were wrong about 3I Atlas, not just about what it was, but about what it represented. It wasn't just an object passing through our solar system, but a guide that came to help us join a larger cosmic community. And now that we have accepted that invitation, humanity will never be the same. The future that once seemed limited by the constraints of our planet and our biology now extends to the stars and beyond, limited only by our imagination and our willingness to learn and grow. We are cosmic citizens in the making, and the universe is waiting to see what we will become.